where we've been talking to people who appear in people who appear in Professional Photographer magazine, who write for the magazine, or also who write for Turning Pro magazine. And as some of you may know, Crash Taylor's a wedding photographer, who is also our editor-at-large for Turning Pro magazine. And basically what that means is he's kind of our eyes and ears out there in the wedding market, keeping us informed as to what's going on, what we should be looking at, and making sure that we're giving the best information we possibly can, and also the most realistic information we can, because I think it's very important to make sure that you've got the information you actually need that's accurate. So we're just going to have a chat, we're going to have a discussion, which will probably last for about half an hour or so. I do apologise, we seem to have had a few problems with microphones today, so we may have to share a microphone for them for the beginning of this, whilst we get the other one repaired. At the end of the session there'll be an opportunity to chat with Crash and ask some questions, or maybe make some comments on some of the things we've been talking about. So just leaves me to say, Crash, thanks very much for coming along, and maybe you could be so kind as just to, for anybody who doesn't know your work, just give us a very brief idea as to how you started in wedding photography, and also the approach you bring, which is different, as you would consider, to what a lot of other people are doing and have been doing over the last few years.
Hey folks, how you doing? Good to see you. Well, basically I started in 2006. I moved to Spain with my wife, and while we were living there I didn't have to work for about 12 months, so I've always been into photography. Decided to go full-time. Went over to Spain, my wife was working, and basically what I did in 2006, I locked myself into a room for about 10 hours a day and I just learned Photoshop, okay? Also, I was out every other day with the camera, shooting everything I could, watching every tutorial, I mean everything, YouTube, everything that you could on photography. And then I decided I got to put some of this into practice. So what I did is I started contacting all the wedding photographers on the coast. Pretty much every one of them said no, that I couldn't assist, and there was this one guy, and he was starting a studio, and he had about 15 weddings booked, and he was really good. So he said to me, I've already got someone, but maybe you could come to the studio and serve coffee and all that stuff. So I thought, okay, might as well get my foot in the door. Well, about a week later, the partner, something fell through, they got into an argument, he had to come back to the UK. So he basically said, why don't you come out with me, you're my new partner, here's a camera and let's go and photograph weddings. And his business skyrocketed, and in that 1 year I did about 50 really high-end weddings with him all over Spain. So I amassed this huge portfolio, started setting up a website and so forth from Spain, and then at the end of 2006 I came back to England and I set up Crash Taylor Photography in Nottingham, and then from then it just skyrocketed from there.
So it's very obvious the way in which you kind of began was a stroke of luck, but then it required total commitment. And I think one of the key things which I've always liked about your work and about your approach is that when you set up blogs and you set up your websites with interviews, what you were doing was very much about photography rather than just about wedding photography. Is that something that was key to you right from the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not just about wedding photography. I don't look at other wedding photographers for inspiration. Of course I did when I started out. You have to see what's going on out there and how you could be better. But nowadays it's more, I look towards the older photographers and the photojournalists and some of the new guys in the fashion world and so forth. That's where I get my inspiration now for weddings. But when you're starting out, of course, it's really good to look at other wedding photographers and see who's the top of their game and go from there. But now, not really weddings.
And do you think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of wedding photographers make when they first start out, is that we've spoken a lot over the last couple of days about photographers finding a voice and finding a way of seeing which is very distinct and unique to themselves. But within the wedding photography market, which particularly over the last few years has been very flooded with people, a lot of people wanting to do it, that's something that they found very difficult, is to actually find that voice as well as create a business.
I mean, a lot of photographers out there, what they're doing is they'll stick on a 24-70 lens on their camera, a 70-200 on their other camera, and they'll go out and every week they're shooting the same photographs, the same, like what I call eye level photography. So they're out there and I see it all the time, and they're all shooting the camera eye level all the time throughout the wedding. They're at 24 mil all the way to 200 mil. Okay, post-production is the same all the time. You look at their work, always the same post-production. So when I go out there, what I try to do, change my lenses. I'll shoot a 16-35, I'll even shoot an 85 prime, and I'll do the 70-200, but then I'm on the ground shooting, I'm shooting up high, you know, I'm jumping on the stools, I'm hiding behind bushes, I'm shooting through bushes, so it's always being different. And that's what a lot of people say. And then when it comes to the post-production, you know, I'm always trying out new effects and including a lot of the landscape. When it comes to weddings also, you also want to keep, you know, figure out what's the bride. She's spending a lot of money, right? And I have a lot of, you know, clients come up to me, and the one thing that they're really interested in is capturing the details of the wedding. You know, the flowers. I mean, a lot of weddings I shoot are 100,000 pounds. They spend 20,000 pounds on the flowers, so you better capture the flowers. The rings, the rooms. I mean, all the details are so important for the bride and groom, and I see a lot of photographers, they don't do that. So just capturing everything, okay, from beginning to end, and trying different focal lengths, different angles, different poses, and so forth. I go to a lot of venues, and I always ask the wedding coordinator at the venue, where do all the wedding photographers shoot when they're here? And she'll tell me this fountain is super, super popular with photographers, and I'll go somewhere else. So when brides see my work at this venue where all the other photographers have shot, my work's completely different. Even though I will go to the fountain and take 1 or 2 shots, but it's always about being different with wedding photography, because it's such a competitive business. And I'm sure Grant will ask other questions, and marketing is, I would say, #1.
If we just talk about that for a moment, because I think one of the areas